Hi, it's Michelle here. Welcome back. Today I have a stack of about 16 plants that I need to take out of 2-inch pots, or should I say 2-inch cups, and put them into 4-inch pots.
Editing Michelle here. When I downloaded this footage off my camera, I was pretty surprised to find it was over 2 hours long. That's too much of me, even for me. So I'm going to break this video up into 2 parts. I've included answers to a lot of questions I've been asked in this video, so I hope you find it useful. Now, on with the video.
Now, I said I had 16 plants, and most of these plants are Hoyas that have been in my cabinet for quite a while, and as you can see have grown quite a bit, and they're all in these 2-inch pots, and they're very, very, very root bound. It's obviously not able to uptake water and nutrition properly, so it's time for this to get potted up into a new pot, and I think it will really take off. The first plant I will get started with is this species Rintzii Borneo, and I just realized I don't have my pond, so let me go get it, and I'll be right back.
A few moments later.
Okay, got my pond. Now let's go ahead and get started on these plants. I'm gonna take the cuttings out of the pots. It looks like the roots has started to grow outside the pot, so we'll be careful to. Okay, so we have this root system for the plant, and I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at it. Just pull on it real gently. I'm gonna try and not disturb it as much as I can. It feels good. The root system feels pretty solid. So now it's time to set up the pot. Now, I know it may seem kind of surprising going from something this big to something this big, but when you actually set it down inside the cup to take a look at it, it's actually not that much larger in the scheme of things. The first thing I do is I always put a wick in these pots. I have my wicking cord right here. I have people ask me, when is a good time to know a plant needs to go from, say, a 2-inch pot or a 2-inch cup to an actual 4-inch pot? And I believe that it's time for a plant to go from a cup to a pot when the plant starts to stop producing rapid growth. It starts producing very thin or misshapen leaves. If you start seeing leaves drop, and for me, the most important sign is when I put water in, the water does not drip into the pot immediately. That to me tells me that that cup is so root bound that there is not enough room for the water to seep into all areas of the cup, and that plant definitely needs to be repotted. I've got the wick in, and this is my pot. So as you can see, when this is inserted in this, there is this much space in which you can put a reservoir of water in, so that the water is not touching the actual pond in the cup where the roots are of the plant, so that you're not, I have found that if you leave water in the pond part of the cup, sometimes you rot more roots than if you have a wick going into a self-contained body of water down in the bottom of the pot, and the wick brings the water up to the pond. I found that I have a less chance of root rot that way. So I'm just gonna fill this up just like any other pot. I'm gonna drop that in there, and I'm not really gonna disturb the root ball. I'm not gonna worry about shaking out all the pollen out of the old root ball. There's no root mealies, so I don't have to worry about not using that pond anymore. I like to use these scoops that you can get off Amazon. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this pot up. And so there I go. That is my pot, and this is repotted now. I'm going to make a video next on how I make trellises for these. So I will set this over on the side. This is my done area. The next plant I have is this Collina IR-26. And it has really grown a lot since I've had it. The funny thing is, it looks nothing now like it did when I got it. This is what it looked like when I got it. See these short little leaves that had a little bit of fuzz on them. They don't look like that now. In my care, they grew these giant little leaves, or these giant larger leaves. I have heard this plant also called a Beacensis. I believe that's what it's called. So I have heard it called other things. Okay, so I'm looking at the Collina, and I'm just taking a general pull on the roots, and I'm not getting any rot. There's some roots over here that definitely have algae on them, but they are not pulling. There's some definitely dead roots way at the top here, and I will cut those off because those were above the substrate, so that's to be expected. So again, this is a fairly good root system. This one is not necessarily root bound, but it's got to the point where it definitely deserves a larger pot so that I can trellis it safely without it becoming like, without it becoming, say, like this GPS 7240, which does have a little trellis in a little pot, and it just falls over all the time. So I'm looking at this pond that was in that, and it is also does not have any root rot in it, so I'm going to reuse that as well. And again, a wick. Now I had some questions formulated to me, so I will go ahead and talk about them. Now, potting media and why I choose what I choose. Now, with Hoyas, right now I mainly choose plastic pots and pond. Whoa, look at the dark. Sorry, we're having a cloudy sky situation here, and so you're gonna see it get darker then lighter. Let me see if I can turn on an overhead light to kind of negate some of the cloud situation we have in our sky.
A few moments later.
For my smaller Hoyas, I mostly use plastic pots and pond. I know what to expect with pond. With soil, there can be more variables than I like to deal with sometimes. That's not to say that I don't like soil. I have all these plants back here with the exception of one at the very top. They're all in soil. Most of my large Hoyas are in soil. It's just that for smaller plants and more sensitive Hoyas, I like to have as much consistency as I can. So that's why I mainly choose pond. And here, on another note, here is my Collina IR-26 ready for a trellis. This is my heuschkeliana, my regular heuschkeliana. It's grown quite a lot. It's got tons of peduncles. So it's got a bloom there. It's got a peduncle there. It's got, let's see, we got one there, we got one there, we got one right there, and we got two all the way down at the base. So we got one all the way down at the end, little teeny weeny down at the end, and then one right there. And it's starting to sun stress, which I don't know is a good look for the heuschkeliana. So let's go ahead and pull this out. But for people who are curious about what I have my viewpoint on for soil plants in smaller sizes, I'm looking at this. This does have a little bit of root issue. I'm just gonna take some pulls on some ends here, just on the outside edges, just to see what this root system would look like on the inside. I don't want to disturb this if I don't have to. The root system is quite thin and fragile, but the plant seems to be healthy, so I'm not going to touch this. I do have plants that are in 4-inch pots in soil that are Hoyas, and for that, I even have some plants that are in self-watering pots in soil. You can't see it, but I have a Rebecca right here that is in cocoa husk in a self-watering pot. It's in a 6-inch self-watering pot though. What I prefer when I have Hoyas in small pots in soil is I look for a plant that likes to keep on the dry side, likes to be soaked and then dry and then soaked and then dry. A good example would be I kept my Latifolia albomarginata, otherwise, formerly known as the macrophylla. I kept that for a very long time in a 4-inch pot in a chunky organic mix. What characteristics do I not want to see when I put Hoyas into organic substrates, into small pots? And here is my heuschkeliana green. The first and foremost thing that I do when I decide to not put a plant into organic mix, or I take out a plant that was in organic mix and put it into pond, the first thing I look at is, does it like to stay evenly moist? Undulata does not like to dry out at all. New Guinea ghost does not like to dry out. In my experience, Polynura. I had to look at it to think of the name. It does not like to dry out. Very hard to accomplish in soil. So that would be something that you would consider putting in organic substrate. This is my lacunosa NOID. This has 1, 2, 3 peduncles. I took it out of the cup, and this is the root system. I'm pulling on it. It's thin, but firm. It is not pulling. I'm not going to pull on it hard. I learned my lesson. I pulled too firmly on another plant's roots, and I ended up torching that plant. Oh man, I ended up killing that plant. We'll have to have an update on that. Oh, there's another peduncle. Found another peduncle. It was in the substrate.
Editing Michelle here again. I took a break at this point because I discovered a small amount of root mealies on this lacunosa, about 20 or so in total. So I stopped what I was doing to grab my bottle of rubbing alcohol.
So I got my rubbing alcohol. Now, normally, 99.9% of the time, what I normally do is I cut off all the roots that I see root mealies on, and I spray down the stem with rubbing alcohol, and I repot it into fresh pond. I'm going to try something. I only saw literally like 3 or 4 little white dots. So I'm going to spray the roots with a rubbing alcohol mixture, and then I'm going to pot it in pond, and I'm going to check it in a couple weeks, and I'm going to see if I see any more spots, if I see any more white patches. If I do, then I'm going to cut off the roots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that sit for about 30 seconds. I'm going to clear off this pond because it's now contaminated. It possibly has root mealies. So I'm going to put this pond, I am going to reuse this pond. I'm going to boil it to sterilize it. So I'm going to keep one of these cups as a pond cup. And this will be my pond I go to sterilize. So pretty much got all that up. So I'm going to put that in the corner there. I'm going to wipe my mat, get all that in the corner, and then I'm going to spray the mat with rubbing alcohol because we do not want to contaminate with mealies. And because this has peduncles on it that are actively growing, I'm going to go wash this rubbing alcohol off. It has done its job.
12 seconds later.
So now we have rinsed the rubbing alcohol off the roots. So there shouldn't be any permanent damage to the roots. I'm feeling the roots. The roots don't feel more friable than they were. Let's go ahead and, why do I choose ceramic or glazed or plastic or anything like that and cash pots? Okay, that's a really good question. I normally choose plastic for Hoyas, and that is literally not a personal choice. That is literally a financial choice. The reason I use the pots you see me using right now for my Hoyas they are cheap. They are the best size I can find. I can buy them in bulk on Amazon, and they are affordable. That's literally the only reason I use these. I love ceramic pots. I have an entire collection of ceramic pots. Unfortunately, most of my ceramic pots from back in the day, from before I had Hoyas, I drilled holes in most of my ceramic pots. So they cannot really be used as for Hoyas because they have holes in them, so they can't be used as cloche pots, as cloches. So that's kind of a bummer. So, but I do like to use ceramic. Now, plastic and ceramic will retain moisture, will hold moisture in. Terracotta will wick moisture away. You can get around most of that by using glazed terracotta, but even glazed terracotta, it can wick away moisture if it is not fully glazed inside. I generally don't repot back into a plastic nursery pot. That's just a personal preference. That's not anything I do for logistic or for plant reasons or anything like that. It's just simply a personal preference. This is my lacunosa NOID. This, I don't think I will be giving a trellis because I think it looks really pretty trailing as is. It's got all its peduncles in their glory. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we got that one. We're really motoring along. This is a perfect question to ask. How do you check for root mealies? I know one of my plants has root mealies and I cannot remember which one. I think it's, oh yeah, it's this one. It's my Rintzii from Borneo. How do I check for root mealies? Okay. The first thing I do is I take a look at the inside cup. Are there any white specks inside the cup? In this case, no. I then take a look on the outside of the cup. Are there white specks on the top of the pot and the roots? And if you look, you'll see that yes, there are. If I pick around, you can see, I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but there are some white specks on top. I have a feeling this will need to be entirely rerooted, not just for root mealies, but because the root system is terrible. This has not grown. Okay. I see the root mealies. The root mealies are right there, the white spots. It is not a very bad case of root mealies, but I'm also going to show you this root system is total garbage. When I go to, I don't know if you can see this root mass right here where my thumb is. See, it's very thin. And when I pull on it, just the very gentlest pull, see how that pulls away and it leaves that hair, this strand. I just gently pull and it leaves those strands in place, those hairs. That's a dead root. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to sterilize my shears, and I am literally going to cut right next to the stem all of the roots. But the question is how do I tell there are root mealies? Because you want to kind of know there are root mealies before you go digging in the pot. Of course, the easiest way to see root mealies is if you have a clear pot, something with sides, clear sides. That way you can see the root mealies before they get bad. That doesn't always work though, because root mealies tend to occupy or tend to get on the roots towards the center of the stem, towards the base of the stem, before growing outwards towards the edges of the roots. So by the time you see them on the outside of the pot, they may be pretty far, far along in the infestation. I'm trimming off the edge of the stem just to make sure it's still alive. Trim down the roots. Okay, now spray the stem with rubbing alcohol. Leave to dry for a minute. I'm going to spray this down because this has got to go. That always, so you gotta make sure everything is sterilized. What do we want to do? Do we want to put this in a 4-inch pot? Not really. We'll probably want to put this one back in a 2-inch cup. But we don't want to use one of those old nasty cups. So I made some new ones up. So I've made a cup with
Editing Michelle time. I really bumbled this explanation of how the 2-cup system works. The inner cup with the holes contains the plant, and water can flow freely through it. The second cup has no holes and acts as a reservoir to trap a small amount of water in and around the inner cup. This prevents the pond from drying out completely. The holes are needed to allow the inner pot to be flushed, and the outer pot can be removed or changed at any time to allow a different amount of moisture to be retained.
Just make sure this is, don't want to spread mealies. But how else do you spot root mealies? The plant will not grow. The cutting will not grow because most of the time you see it on cuttings. The cutting will not grow. You've checked out the plant. It doesn't have flat mites. That can be a common cause for cuttings to not grow. And here's my Rintzii, all in its nice new home. The main reason that you would notice that your plant would have root mealies is the plant would stop growing, suddenly stop growing, or that leaves would start dropping, or that leaves would yellow and fall off. Normally that's a watering issue, but it can be a root mealie issue. So that's something.
Video editing Michelle here. I finished 6 out of the 16 plants so far in this video, and I think this is probably a good place to end it here, for now anyway. I'll continue to edit this video and release a part 2 and a part 3. If you want to tell me in the comments if you'd like to see those released right after this video, or if you'd like a no plant chore video in between. But anyway, thank you so much for watching until the end. I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.